So hello everyone. Thank you for being here and participating to this chat that we're having here. No, I stepped out of the I said I should never step out of these lines here, otherwise lava is going to get me. So, right, it's difficult to start without knowing, anything about the audience. So, I just wanted to introduce myself for a little bit. I work in marketing. I've been working in marketing for a long time, I would say. I started, my first project was in 1997, so kind of some years ago. And we were doing a live streaming of a Champions League final. If you follow football, I don't know. It was Champions League final. We were doing a live streaming of an event connected to it in 1997 with a square that was like 120 by 80 pixels. It was like this on the screen, because of course the bandwidth was not allowing anything better. It didn't go very well, but it was interesting anyway. Okay. My name is Paolo. I come from Italy. I'm here having just a holiday in Bali, and well, since my company is a partner with Livit, they just were very happy to host me here to have a chat, and I'm glad that you decided to come. When they asked me what I could talk about to share some of my present work, I thought that the best way was to talk about what is happening with artificial intelligence today, because it's a topic that is already penetrating our lives very much, even without knowing it. So I think in order to start talking about this, I would really like to have very, very quickly your opinion about it. So the first question that I would like to ask myself and to everybody, do we know what exactly artificial intelligence is? Because it seems like there's a lot of people that are talking about it. They fill their mouths, with these words. Everybody seems to be talking about the fact that there's artificial intelligence everywhere. I can tell you that in the advertising space, for example, Google loves to say that there's artificial intelligence in everything they do, even if it's not true. Even other tools like Manago or Klaviyo, a lot of marketing automation tools, they say they're using artificial intelligence, but they're not always doing so. Sometimes they're just using relational databases to make the matching and to take the decisions, so it's not really an intelligence. So what I'm wondering is, I don't know if you can take a note or if you can take out your phone for a second, or an application where you can write something. Can I give them 1 minute?
Yes. 1
minute to just try to give me an answer of what is artificial intelligence. Don't go Googling it now, because I have the slides of that I did myself. Don't take my job away from me, please. Just your opinion. Does anybody here already works with artificial intelligence somehow? One person.
I work at Google, but I agree with your statement about not AI.
Thank you. Yeah. He just earned a coffee that I paid for him.
It's the ability.
Okay. Yeah, we have the first.
It's the ability
to
copy or in a way mimics how the brain works. Through technology, right? I mean, machine replicating or trying to do the same thing as how our brain works.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the definitions that we will see.
And learning along the way.
Yeah.
And learning along the way.
Yeah.
Teaching yourself. Yeah.
I think that by mimicking, he was saying mimicking the ability to learn and to adapt to situations. Right. Any other definition you can think of? What is artificial intelligence? So, first of all, it's not human, right?
Yeah.
So artificial intelligence is intelligence of machines, not humans. Okay? So if we just go to Wikipedia, it's easy to see that for somebody it's easy to see, for others it's not that easy to see. That artificial intelligence is just an intelligence demonstrated by machines, as opposed to what? To natural intelligence. So actually artificial intelligence is the opposite of natural intelligence, which is the intelligence that most humans have and animals, and that is the real difference. What happens is also that artificial intelligence has been defined in the field of highly intelligent agents that are able to perceive the environment and understand the environment and take actions, okay? But this is not absolutely entirely complete, because if you think about, can you tell me an example of a device that can, for example, listen to the environment and take a decision? Alexa, yes, but that is artificial intelligence.
Some applications that they use in the agriculture. So when the humidity in the soil is like dropped down, it operates itself and open the way
Perfect,
for water
yeah.
or something like that.
We can go for other simple examples. For example, the windshield of your car, when it feels that the rain is coming, starts the windshield. Is that intelligence? It's not. It's a decision, but it's not intelligence, okay? Because it doesn't really learn. It doesn't learn what the water is made of, what rain is made of.
If condition, right?
Exactly.
It's what if, yeah.
It's an if condition.
Yeah. So the point is that if it is an if condition, it's not intelligence, exactly like you're saying. Yeah. The point is that sometimes artificial intelligence is defined so even without being so, and that's why maybe today we're trying to kind of understand exactly what it should be or how it should be defined. First of all, I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence in general. I work in marketing, so I'm talking about artificial intelligence in marketing and how it is used, okay? I'll try to make you as little bored as possible. But it's important to understand what it is, because any sensor can perceive a change and take a decision. But a sensor is not an intelligent being, okay? It is, of course, the embryo of an intelligent system, because many sensors is what actually build plus an algorithm, artificial intelligence, because you need sensors, because you need something or somebody to read the reality in order to react to it. Without sensors, it's impossible to have it. But you can't really call artificial intelligence just a sensor that you have in the car that starts the windshield when it feels the rain, right? The Oxford Dictionary says that the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks requiring normally human intelligence. For example, visual perception, speech recognition, we're going to talk about this, and most importantly, decision making. So if it takes a decision, if a machine is able to take a decision, probably this machine is an intelligent machine. Still not complete. Here we come closer to your definition, where actually IBM says that artificial intelligence is when machines are able to mimic the problem solving and decision making capabilities of the human mind. So in this case, it's not just decision making like a sensor would do, but it's also solving a problem, okay? When it comes to artificial intelligence, I am sure that we have talked about, we have heard about Alan Turing, okay? We were talking about. This is the person that in 1950 kind of started the idea of artificial intelligence. He's the first person that actually created in the 1950 a test. It still exists. You know, there is a test called the Turing test. You can go online and Google it and actually take the Turing test. It's a test that's supposed to tell you whether you're a machine or you're a person. It normally guesses right, okay? But it's a really interesting test. Now, this is an important slide today, and I'm sure you have seen it before, but it always brings me clarity when I see it, and I hope it does the same with you. You have heard about deep learning, you've heard about machine learning, you've learned and heard about artificial intelligence, but how are they interconnected? So this is the way that it is. So deep learning is a part of machine learning, which is part of artificial intelligence in general. So not everything that comes to machine learning is actually done with deep learning. There are other ways. And not everything that is artificial intelligence is done through machine learning. Actually, if we want to look at the definition that I'm using, is that artificial intelligence is the broader concept that makes any machine behave in a way that we would define smart. Machine learning is one of the applications of artificial intelligence that is built around the idea that we should be able to give to machines access to data, and then when machine has access to data, it can actually infer what the data what insights the data can produce, and you can act upon that. I was very, very close to stepping in now. Okay. Deep learning is one of many approaches, okay? Who was talking before about the brain? I think you were talking about the brain. Somebody mentioned the brain function. I don't remember who it was. Okay, you did it? Yeah, okay. But because that's a part of artificial intelligence. Not all artificial intelligence has to do with something that mimics the behavior of the brain. When you go to that depth, then you have to talk about deep learning. Deep learning is when algorithms are actually designed to try and mimic the structural and functional nature of the brain itself. Okay, with neural connections that are used as metaphors for connections within the machine. It's still driven by algorithm, but it's very deep. So when it comes to understanding languages and things like that, then you have to go to deep learning if you want to make a good use of the NLP applications, and if you want to understand how a machine can interpret an image or a text by understanding its context. And otherwise, most of the tasks that we see today, they are easily dealt with simple machine learning, let's say, which is enough to manage what can be written in a relational database and make sense of the structured data. The point of this and the previous slide is about the fact that not all data is easy to understand, okay, for us and for the machine. So the deeper you go into the difficulty of the interpretation of data, the more sophisticated the algorithm has to be. Yeah, I think it makes sense, right? So deep brain is used to actually try to understand unstructured data. Do you know the difference between structured data and unstructured data? So structured data is a database, okay, or an Excel file where you have the structure in the table. It's like number of rows, number of columns, and it's very easy to find a specific set of data. But sometimes you need machine learning because there's too much quantity for you to manage it, as a human. So you need a machine to help you go through that. But what is an example of unstructured data? Do you have any idea about this?
Could it be a collection of words?
Collection of words, yeah. For example,
Interviews?
pardon?
Interviews?
Yeah. Do you all? Who here uses, I don't know, Instagram, for example? Nobody uses Instagram? Yeah. Some people? Yeah. By contract, I'm supposed to use Instagram, don't ask me. Okay, right. So, or Facebook, okay? When you go to Facebook, you can see what your friends are posting, and you can decide if you want to comment on them, for example, okay? You can also just like them. So, the action of liking is structured data, because it's a very, very easy data to find out. A photo or a post is even liked or not liked, okay? But an example of unstructured data is the comment. That is very difficult for a machine to understand, because the comment has context. The content has a meaning, which goes beyond being switched and it's either on or off, just like the like or not like. Okay, the comment is typical unstructured data. So most of the learning algorithms are done when it comes to marketing to try and understand what words mean. Thank you for the suggestion. So what words mean mostly is you need to understand if a comment is good or bad. And that's not very easy, because any language has a slang. There are so many languages, there are many slangs, there are many dialects. There is sarcasm, there is irony. Who uses sarcasm when they speak? I do. Right? It's not very, you don't use sarcasm. No, he doesn't. You do. Okay. I didn't find it. Sorry. I think that the point is that you understand how difficult it can be for a machine to understand sarcasm. How they do get it, they do understand it, but it's not very easy. Okay. I wanted to give you a little bit of scope for today. So I just want to make a brief introduction of what I think is the most important concepts, I didn't see what time we started, so I'll just have you telling me, to shut up. And then I wanted to go into what are the applications of artificial intelligence when it comes to marketing, because they are very powerful and because we cannot do without them anymore. Who works in marketing somehow here? Oh, okay, quite many people. Right. So here is just a recap of some of the ways in which artificial intelligence is used, not just in marketing. I'll just leave it to you as a slide. These slides will be available, I think, to you, right, Agnes? Or are they ready? They're not? No, okay. And one thing that I wanted to just touch as just a very small concept before going deeper into the marketing part is augmented intelligence and analytics. Have you heard about augmented intelligence and augmented analytics? Well, you have heard it today if you haven't before. The point is that it seems like not all decisions or not all activities can be or will ever be delegated to a machine. There is still going to be some decision making, some insights, capturing that will need a human brain. We cannot just rely on that. So actually, a lot of the applications, especially when it comes to data analytics and to data dashboards, a lot of these applications, they are trying to be melting with the possibility of humans to personalize them and customize them very much, because when they are taken out of the box, they don't usually represent enough what they do. So if you, have you heard about Google Analytics, for example? Yes? Okay. If you have heard about Google Analytics, you have heard probably about Avinash Kaushik, who's one of the evangelists of Google Analytics, and this guy was always saying, do not go to Google Analytics to view the reports. Just don't go there. Or do never open Google Analytics unless you have decided before what you want to see. And first of all, do not ever delegate a decision to Google Analytics, because Google Analytics will never tell you exactly why something happens. Google Analytics and a lot of data tools online, they can tell you what happens on your website, what happens on your social media account, what happens on your Facebook business page, Instagram page, TikTok, what, but not why, right? You want to analyze what is going on in your marketing, you need at least 3 data points. You need to know the what, you need to know why, and you need to know the context. If you want to know the what, you can use tools. If you want to know the why, the only way is to speak to your potential clients or to existing clients and understand why they did something. The only way you have to understand a why is to ask. If you want to know the context, then you have the possibility of doing.
But Pablo, it's the same with any research. You have to analyze the research in order to find the insights.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the research just gives it facts, then you have to interpret those facts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the point of augmented intelligence and analytics is it's a new approach that brings together the best of intelligence, but doesn't just leave it to artificial intelligence to drive decision, but needs human intervention to actually derive the insight that then takes the decision.
Can
Okay?
it go the other way? Like, human.
Yes, it normally goes the other one. The insight is driven by data. The point is that too many times, the insight of the person biases the data that you're going to find. There are so many examples in research where the human insight or the human expectation actually biases the research results. That it's been dangerous. Okay? But yeah, that is what can anyway happen. But it's just that sometimes some problems are going to be so complex that you will need human intuition as well as machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's not going to be enough to just take artificial intelligence. Okay? This is probably the point. If you have questions, we have a session afterwards, but I don't mind if you want to. If it's something that enriches the conversation, please do intervene and just let me know. It's not a problem for me. Now, I had to think a bit long to try and understand how to explain the way that artificial intelligence has penetrated the marketing field. This is the moment in which I will start talking about the applications in digital marketing, especially for the artificial intelligence. and this is a topic that we will talk about for quite some time. After that, there will be a session of Q&A. So actually at the bottom of this presentation, there is a few slides dedicated to some of the new Google acquisition types, campaign types, that they are driven by artificial intelligence. I'm not sure we will have time to talk about this, but if you're interested into it, I'll try to talk about it because it's very current, I would say, not for somebody who works in Google, but maybe for the others. Okay? First of all, the AI applications. These are the fields of application. Can you actually see that? Okay. So, you can use artificial intelligence for acquisition. That means driving people to your website, driving people to your social media, driving people to your digital premises, let's say in general. You can use artificial intelligence, AI, to discover and engage client, to actually consume and also create content. You can use it for email marketing, speech recognition, image recognition, web design. Yeah, and they are not very good yet, the tools that actually design websites by themselves, but they are starting to be interesting. To do predictive customer service, to do customer segmentation, this is extremely important. Anybody is working with marketing automation?
Bots?
Sorry?
Bots?
Marketing automation? No? Okay. Some, a little bit, yeah. Customer segmentation is at the basis of marketing automation, such as churn prediction. Then you can also work on product pricing. Conversion rate optimization has been, since kind of the beginning, one of the first ways in which artificial intelligence was used and adapted for marketing. And of course, fraud detection. That's a classic. Okay, I didn't want to put it here, but it looks good. So, yeah. Let's look at acquisition. So, in every slide, I will try to explain how it is used in that specific, touch point, and then I have just listed here some of the most important tools that I used today for this application. Am I explaining myself correctly? Is that understood? Yeah? Okay, I put the links here. I am in no way associated to these tools, so this is not advertising. Okay, I'm just saying what these things mean. Right. So, when it comes to acquisition, is everybody familiar with the word acquisition? It's like user acquisition. It means acquiring eyes towards your digital presences. So, campaign management, for example, campaigns on Google, Facebook, on any kind of network. That activity belongs to the broader category of acquisition, user acquisition. Okay? So, in acquisition, the most important way you use artificial intelligence, by knowing it or not knowing it, because the platforms do it, is the bid management. Okay? So if you have advertised on Facebook or Google, you know that you never bid on a fixed price. You don't never pay a fixed price. It's always a bid. And the bid is managed by an algorithm. The algorithm takes into considerations a lot of data and a lot of factors. Google algorithm takes into consideration competition on specific keywords or for specific placement, takes into consideration the time of the day, the hour of the day, your previous decision, the way that your account is being managed, if it is a quality account, if it's not a quality account. I hope you're all aware of this. I hope you're aware of the fact that Google and Facebook, they have quality scores within their platforms. If you manage the campaign badly, they penalize you. They make you pay more for the advertising that you're actually paying for. Is everybody aware of this? Yeah, okay, not everybody. You should be. It helps because Google has a quality score. The quality score is used every time an advertisement is decided to be eligible for specific keywords. So anytime somebody goes into Google and searches for something, then Google decides, okay, is there any advertiser that is bidding on this keyword? And in that moment, the algorithm decides if you're eligible or not. And the level at which the ranking that your ad as an advertiser appears is actually highly influenced by the quality score of your account. Quality score is a number in Google that goes from 1 to 10, and it's a multiplier. It's multiplied with your maximum CPC to determine whether you have a high ranking or a low ranking. So you can have somebody outranking you even with a much lower bid because they manage the account better than you do. Same as Facebook. The cost per click on Facebook is very, very highly influenced by how well you are in managing your campaigns. If you suck, you pay a lot. If you do it well, you save money. Is this recording? Right. So, besides bid management, also ad personalization. Actually, real-time ad personalization is what is happening. That means you go to, I don't know, a news site and you see an ad, and the ad is personalized for you, exactly for you, because of a previous touch point that you had with that or another website. Let's say that you have made an estimate for new insurance for your car, and you have inserted into the form what model the car was, bless you, what model the car was and things like that. Then you go online to a news section, and what do you see? You see an ad with that model of the car just screaming at you, hey, you still haven't downloaded, you still haven't purchased that estimate, that quote that you did for your insurance, okay? That's ad personalization. So, ad personalization tools, they're actually able to do copy testing in real time to create one-to-one targeting messages. That means that all these tools, for example, Watson IBM or Albert, okay, these tools, they look at so many signals about a specific person, so many signals, they try to learn all the fingerprinting. We'll talk about fingerprinting later if you are interested, okay? They listen to all this information, and what do? They try to depict, they paint a potential picture of the user, and they use all the data that they have to personalize the ad. So that you, as you all know, I'm sure, in marketing, if a communication is perceived as being one-to-one, it's a lot more effective. So ad personalization is definitely one of the things we're using it very much. And Google Performance Max campaigns that have been launched this year are using also, first of all, artificial intelligence for bid management, but definitely also they are going into finally ad personalization. Because if anybody of you, like, well, myself, has been advertising for many years in Google, you know that if there is something that Google does not do well still, is ad personalization. Okay? Is anybody working with Google Ads today? Okay. Have you tried Performance Max? You have?
Yes.
Do you like it?
Well, right now it's doing absolutely rubbish. But when they just sold this new campaign type, it was to the moon.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to ask you later
Sure.
for what you're using it, because I'm using it for many clients.
Yeah.
For some clients, they're going very well. For some clients, they are struggling a bit. But I would say it's an improvement. For my clients, it has been an improvement in terms of cost. But I'll just.
Well, what exactly is it? Is it an optimization tool or?
It's a different type of campaign that is almost entirely managed by artificial intelligence. But it works. The more you set it up, the better you set it up, the better it works. So it requires a lot of work to set it up,
Parameters.
and probably 6 to 8 weeks to actually make it run properly, because it needs to accrue data before
To learn and get better, yeah.
I'm just working on the edge all the time. It's just a little step. Okay, right. Acquisition. This is an example of what Albert does. It has been doing for quite some times. There are just screenshots. I will link them to you for the slides. I don't want to dwell too much. It's just that I thought that some pictures would look better than just text. When it comes to another application is discovery and engagement. Okay, that means understanding what users are saying about a brand or about a topic. That's where you need artificial intelligence to understand the neural language processing. Okay, they need to understand what it is. you need to understand text, machines, they do text mining and they do sentiment analysis. You have probably heard about this, right? I'm sure that, does anybody here work also on SEO? Yeah? Yes and no. The answer is yes and no, okay? Yeah, so Google algorithm is, of course, very, very proficient in doing text mining, okay? They have probably the largest number of how do you call it, brevetti, licenses and patents about text mining. Some of them have been acquired by, achieved by programming them, some others by buying companies that had programmed them before. Okay? This is a tool, BrandWatch is an interesting tool that is for social media engagement and for listening and discovering. I find it very interesting. It's not free. It's not even like, it's not even too expensive though. So it's an average that can be used. I find it quite easy to use. There are other, many tools in this way. So if you go to, I don't know, FanPage Karma, there are so many tools in this way, but it's very difficult for all these tools to actually do the sentiment analysis. If you have worked with a tool like this before, you know that there's a kind of a gauge icon that tells you if a comment is positive or negative, it's green or red. I don't know if you've seen something like that before. It always needs a lot of tweaking because it's not very good in understanding it, but it's of course very difficult. When it comes to content creation, this is very much current. Anybody here works in content creation? Yes. Okay. Right. So you know that there are a lot of tools that do content creation. You know that, for example, a lot of the articles on Forbes are actually written by a machine and not by a human being. Okay? You know that machines are very good at writing articles when they are fed a table of data and they write an article about it. And if you write like an industry, if you provide them with an industry report, they're able to define, to create a book out of that. Okay? We do a lot of content marketing for our clients, and I have to say we are starting to look into using these tools. Jasper, have you heard about this? Jasper.ai. You have heard? Are you using it?
No, just seeing ads for it.
Yeah? Okay. So it seems to be interesting. It definitely generates readable article. Of course, when we talk about quality article, it still needs some tweaking. So the era of just publish it and they will come is over, if it has ever started. If you don't provide quality, don't write. If you don't publish quality content on your website, just avoid the hassle. Just forget about it. You have to point at quality. But they do know that. So here, Wordsmith, I think it even has a plugin for WordPress, so it's easier to manage it there. But Jasper actually seems very, very interesting. And when it comes to narrative science is one of the most important companies into this category. And they created one was called Quill Engage, I think. And they create a lot of, for example, tools that are able to translate what dashboards say. For example, it's very small here, but this is a tool for narrative science that is actually taking data from Google Analytics. Takes data from Google Analytics and turns it into a paragraph that people can actually read. So the data is a table, but it says, according to your selection, the analysis measures profit ratio and profit by state. On average, profit increases by 5.6 million percentage points for each additional unit and profit ratio across all states. As you see, it's a very, very understanding paragraph of text. It seems to have been written by somebody, but it's just the algorithm that is connected to the Google Analytics property view in this case. And you tell it what period you want to look at. You actually configure it by, you always need to instruct artificial intelligence, okay? So you instruct this tool by telling what are the KPIs that it should be focusing on. Let's still call it it. Until we can, let's still refer to intelligence to it. And then it gives you this written as an example. email marketing and automation. You know that a lot of emails that we see around are actually created by tools. They are not actually written by somebody. There's a lot of tools that are able to define the content of what is being written using a lot of data. For example, there are tools that don't even need somebody to write the intro text or text about a product. There are tools that are actually able to understand a user and customize the email by looking at the previous touch point that this user has had with the company. I didn't explain this very well, but let me make an example. Let's say that you're a client of Zappos, okay, for example, or Amazon. Let's say Amazon. If you're a client of Amazon, Amazon knows not only what you have visited on Amazon, Amazon knows also if you have clicked on a previous email, what products you have purchased, if you have clicked on one of their Facebook posts, if you have liked it, if you have commented. All those touch points are used to determine what is being written on your email, and the email is being written automatically. Right? When it comes to automation, two of the most important softwares today, I think they're Klaviyo and Sesmanago. Anybody knows Klaviyo or Sesmanago? Which one? Klaviyo? Okay. So Sesmanago is, in a way, you're going to see this appear. We are partnered with this company. I'm not involved with them. We're using it for our clients, so I'm not doing any advertising. But Klaviyo is doing something. Sesmanago is doing it better. But it's like 5 to 10 times more expensive, so it makes sense, right? So Klaviyo makes marketing automation. It's very smart. We really like it because for some even mid-sized companies, Klaviyo is definitely delivering. It makes automation also with rules that can depend on the various touch points. So I think you should check this tool out. It's fairly inexpensive, I would say. Are you having good results with it?
Are you talking about creating, the Klaviyo can create your emails for you, or just the flow?
Klaviyo cannot create the content.
Okay, I thought
Okay,
that's what
it
you
can.
were saying.
Pardon?
I thought that's what you were saying.
No,
Yeah.
Klaviyo cannot do that.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
it can do it, but it has, I don't know. But it has some extensions when it comes to segmenting the data in the audiences in an intelligent way according to their behavior.
Yeah,
So it
segmentation.
understands their behavior. Okay. So when you create the buckets, you create dynamic buckets sometimes for the automations, I think.
Yeah.
Sesmanago has got the same features, plus it's a CDP. It's a customer data platform. So all the segments that are being created through the automations not only can be used to actually serve an email, but they are used as custom audiences. You can push them out via API to Facebook, Google, things like that. So you can have multi-touch, omni-touch campaigns. Sorry. Okay. This is some tools some of the things that you can do with email marketing. Once again, I'm not going to read the slide. We're just going to receive it. You'll see it there. Speech and language recognition. Of course, Google is very good in understanding, the speech and language recognition. It's used mainly for two applications: to understand voice commands and to translate on the fly. So all the applications that you see today, they are mainly used, the artificial intelligence in these applications used to understand and interpret what the owner of a device wants. So every time you talk to Alexa, Alexa has to understand what you are actually wanting from it, and to translate on the fly. So as you know, the Chrome translator is driven and fueled by artificial intelligence. So all the apps that use this intelligence, I've put here a link of all the apps that are using it. You will find Siri, Alexa, and all sorts of apps, and also the Google Cloud Doc. This is a very interesting document that I found there that I listed. It's actually a document by Google that explains how they do language recognition. There are some technical parts in this document, but it's still an interesting read. So if you want, I just leave the resource there. Image recognition. This is not easy, but it's one of the most important things that that Facebook has to do, that Instagram have to do. Because if they want to try to prevent spam, if they want to prevent violence, if they want to prevent pornography to appear on their on their timelines, then they have to be very good into understanding how that works. The first attempts, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, you know how it was done. You know that colors are coded in RGB on a computer, right? So what these tools were using initially was no artificial intelligence. They were just simply understanding what color, what RGB codes would represent human flesh, okay, as a range. And if a certain photo had too much human flesh as a percentage, as a ratio, compared to the whole photo, it would be banned, or it would be actually sent for a deeper scan. Okay, so initially, what these tools were doing, there was no artificial intelligence. They're still working like that. They're still doing the RGB codes, understanding if it's human flesh, or they're recognizing patterns such as shapes. I'm not going to be more explicit than that, but I'm sure you understand the point. And they work like that. It's very important for all the things. And an interesting thing is that it's actually done also the opposite direction. For example, is there, sometimes this image recognition is used for the machines to understand a photo, but sometimes the machines use it also to understand if we are human. Can you get an idea of that? You have all seen it.
The mobile facial recognition.
No?
Facial recognition?
No?
Sorry, what was the question?
Question is an example in which actually machines are trying to understand if the person that is consuming a specific content is human.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a image?
The captcha.
Capture.
The captcha. Absolutely. That's also artificial intelligence. That's a machine that is using an algorithm to understand whether we are humans. Okay? So image recognition is used both ways. It's used also by the machines to understand if we're humans or not. Okay? You have probably tried to use, maybe when they launched it, the reverse search from Google. So if you search actually for an image on Google, you find similar images, or sometimes you're able to find it in the initial one. Definitely Amazon is necessarily good into image recognition because they do need to understand and protect for fraud. So product copies or images that are copy-pasted by other accounts. That's super important for Amazon, super important. They need to make sure that no other people is actually posting the same product with another account. Okay? And IBM tool as well. Website design. There are two tools. There used to be another one that actually failed. It was not working. It was called The Grid. It used to connect to your Google Analytics, to your Facebook profiles and things like that. You would feed some information and would actually draft a copy of the website and publish it. It didn't work out very well, so it was always on a beta until it just disappeared. There's Adobe Sensei that is able to actually do draft a structure of a website by understanding what you tell them, instructing with some live feed of products, for example, or images, and you actually can design part of the website by itself. Not the cheapest solution you can find, as long as it will be still more expensive than 10 developers. It's not going to be, of course, very commercial. And there's this FireDrop, which is a new application. I have not tried it, but it's promising, so I just want to list it here. If not for prediction, what else should artificial intelligence be used for? So it is actually used for predictions, predictive customer service. So the artificial intelligence is connected to all the major e-commerce websites, and it's actually used to understand whether a specific customer should be somehow contacted, incentivized to buy further, recalled because it disappeared. There are a lot of actions that can be done. But predictive customer service is just like inserting a layer between the different tools within an e-commerce website and the user experience and the user interface. Try and understand exactly what they should display to a client, because according to the profile of a specific client, the interface changes. Do you think you all see the same Amazon interface, for example? You don't. The interface of Amazon has been one for a long time, okay? And it's even actually continuously tested. If you think about it, Amazon is testing almost up to 10 changes per week to the interface. They change it at least 10 times a week. Not up to, but at least 10 times a week. By changing the color of a button, the position of a text, the color of a text, the size of a font. They change a lot of things. Probably one of the tools that makes the most test is actually Google. Google interface and algorithm is being tested about 15,000 times a year. And just 500 or 600 of these changes seem to actually be kept. The others are just left. Okay? Customer segmentation. This is also important. Who does advertising here? Advertising. Do you advertise? Yeah? Not too many. Okay? What do you think is the most important thing when it comes to advertising today? Or what are the most important things when it comes to advertising?
Timing.
Beautiful. Time. Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Context.
Content. Yeah, sorry, I heard contact and was.
Are you saying context? I mean, like when someone is searching for something, then you should give their context.
Okay. Context. Yeah.
That you get what you pay for?
Sorry.
That you get the audience that you paid for?
Audience. Yeah. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, audience, reach.
Yeah. Yeah. But reaching the right audience.
Yeah.
Right. All right. I think this is it has to do with timing. Okay. You need to reach, the advertising as good as you're able to reach the right audience at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't manage to do that, your advertisement will fail. Okay? What is the point? Understanding the audience today is very difficult, and it is going to be a lot more difficult. How do platforms today understand about us? Google and Facebook, how do they know, many times, what do they need in order to decide when I go into like a Google network, or when I go onto Facebook, when I log into Facebook in my timeline, I see an ad that you will not see because we are different, right? How does it decide whether it should show me something and you something else? Based on interest? Yes, based mainly on cookies. So today, all advertising platforms heavily rely on cookies. Okay? That's how the platforms learn about us. Now, you have probably followed the latest announcement by Google. Actually, it was supposed to stop the delivery of cookies on the 1st of January 2023. You have heard about that?
Yes.
Okay? They just delayed it to mid-2024.
Wow.
It used to be, the initial date was 1st of January 2022. They postponed it to 2023, and now they postponed it again to the second half of 2024. So they postponed it even longer, right? Why? Because they still haven't figured out very much a way to understand who the users are without the cookies.
An alternative system.
Sorry?
An alternative system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They still haven't found it. Okay, we'll talk maybe about that later. But that's the important part is that they're using cookies to do a lot of customer segmentation. Okay, to understand us. They're not using just cookies. They're using a lot of signals. We all leave a fingerprint wherever we go. And they're using this technique of fingerprinting, reverse fingerprinting, to understand who we are, even without the cookies. It's just that the cookie system is just too strong compared to all the other signals. The other fingerprinting techniques are not able yet. Okay? Fingerprinting means that let's say that you are browsing you're coming to a website twice with the same IP, the website thinks that maybe you're the same person. You are coming with the same IP and also with the same operating system and also with the same device and also from the same location. Then Google knows you are the same person. It's guessing that you're the same person. Has it used the cookies? It hasn't used the cookies. It has used other data, right? Other signals, no cookies. But this way of fingerprinting today is not as precise as the cookies. So what happens? Google cannot entirely replace the campaign management and the bidding and the audience recognition that it has so easily with the cookies with a tool that's not ready yet. It's a commercial issue, mainly. Google makes about $50 billion a month with Google Ads. And most of these campaigns, not most, sorry, but much of these, a big percentage of these campaigns are retargeting campaigns. They're saying probably 20 to 30%, depending at times. 20 to 30% of these $50 billion per month are retargeting campaigns. What does it mean? If you don't have cookies, they don't get the money. So they need to find another way to do it. It's just that they're working in parallel. As Google is trying to find another way to recognize that I am browsing, then in Europe, the system and the government is trying to find a way to ban also that way of recognizing the user. Because the government says if somebody does not want to be recognized, you just should not recognize it. You should just not retarget that person. That's why also they postponed it. Sorry, I don't want to be too much off topic, but it is a lot about intelligence and advertising, and this is something that you will have to deal with, okay? Be careful, because the moment in which the cookie will disappear from the scenario, your whole acquisition strategy will change. If you don't have the cookies to retarget the users, how do you do it? How do you retarget the users that you don't have cookies of? With their email. But you don't have the email of everybody who's visiting your website, do you? That's the focus of your strategy. That's the way that every website should change the focus in their marketing. That's why content is being so important today, because content, and especially gated content, when it has a value, is the best way to acquire new data, to acquire user data, to acquire email, and to create a mailing list that then you can use for targeting, marketing automation, and advanced targeting with a CDP. When you have a mailing list of people that have subscribed to your website, that mailing list is always used to understand its behavior with a lot of signals. So if that person likes you on social media and reads your email, but not all the email, but clicks on one content of your email, all these things with a tool like Sales Manager, like I was saying before, all these things, they add up to your profile into this CDP, a customer data platform. CDP stands for customer data platform. All these information about a certain profile are used then to define what is the better audience at the best timing.
But Pablo, I mean, I do targeting in Indonesia, and email doesn't work for the working class. Doesn't exist, forget it. All my car mechanics, 10,000 car mechanics.
I agree.
All mobile phone numbers.
Yeah, WhatsApp.
And they change their numbers.
WhatsApp. Yeah.
20% of them change their numbers every month.
Most of them,
So-
which is the reason for which Facebook many years ago acquired WhatsApp. Okay, so you can do the same things with phone numbers. Yeah, but still, the point is not if it doesn't really matter if they actually read the well, it matters they read the email. But I'm saying once you have the email, then you have like
But these people don't have email addresses.
right. If you have the email
Yeah.
or the phone number,
Yeah.
then you have a pivotal point that makes the CDP understand who the person is and tracks that person on other behavior. So if you have the WhatsApp number, they're recognized on Facebook, they're recognized by Google many times. So if Google and Facebook recognize them, they know what to serve them, regardless of the fact that they read the email or not. It's a question of finding the pivotal point on which you can rely with all the data that the tools are gathering around. Anyway, bottom line, sorry getting too technical. If you're doing advertising today, you're probably using either Facebook or Google. You will soon need to use a CDP. Because anybody's doing advertising both on Google and Facebook? Okay, right. A conversion comes from Google and Facebook says, I sent it. A conversion comes from Facebook and Google says, I sent it. How many times has it happened to you? When you count conversions, they're always claiming it for themselves. Google always says that if it has been on Google, and made a search, and it has come to your website through Google once, then the conversion is from Google. And Facebook even says if a user has not even liked your ad, but if a person has seen the ad scrolling the timeline, that's a Facebook conversion. So at the end of the month, you stop, you look at the conversions, you say, okay, I have 55 conversions. And then you look at the emails that you received, and there are like 30. What's the matter there? The point is that 50 is Google plus Facebook, but actually, they're actually duplicated. So CDP is a very important tool because it makes the deduplication of the conversions. And that's something you definitely need. When you want to decide where to put the money, if you don't deduplicate the leads with the customer data platform, you don't know where to put your money. Okay, short prediction. So there are a lot of tools. There's both machine learning models and analytical learning models that are used to try to understand when a user is likely to churn from an e-commerce website, for example. Okay. The machine learning model is just using contextual data and relational databases, so stored information that you have, and it's a short-term analysis. Whereas analytical model, so it takes into consideration the potential client lifetime value over many months or potentially years, and actually tells you how your company can go within years and things like that. Tools you can see is like Dataiku and Churnly. They are both using analytical models, but they also work in short term to understand, and the Churnly is pretty cheap as a tool. If you connect it to an e-commerce and you connect it to your database, it can tell you more or less when your customer is more or less likely to churn. Even Salesmanago, the CDP I told you before, it has a tool, it has a coefficient, like a customer score. And at a certain point, when the score is too low, it seems like you're losing a client, then it can automatically trigger out a campaign to recover it, or an email to recover it, to try and get it back as an active profile. Okay. How are we going so far? Everything okay? Yes? I got just a single water, sorry. Who took the advantage to the moment to run away? I saw you, the guy from Google. You ran away. Google is so sneaky, right? Okay, market attribution is what we were talking about before. So I guess everybody's struggling with this, so understanding what is the channel that actually brings you the most value is very difficult online. So artificial intelligence is of course being used to try and give credit, the right credit to the right channel. You have you seen Google Analytics? Anybody has used analytics, Google Analytics? Yeah, okay. So have you configured in a way that it actually tracks the conversions of a website? Hopefully so, right. You know that Google Analytics has different attribution models within analytics. Normally, it's based on last click attribution. So it gives the credit of the conversion to the latest channel that was visited just before the acquisition. So you go to the website via Facebook, then via TikTok, then Instagram, then Google, then you convert. Analytics will say Google is the channel that brought you the conversion. Okay? But you can change it. in analytics, you can also change the whole philosophy of Google Analytics and change it to first click attribution, or to pondered, or to other models, or to, for example, artificial intelligence managed model. And that is probably the best way. But the point is that if you are using only Google Analytics for the attribution, today you're losing a big part of information, because Google Analytics works thanks to what is making Google Analytics work. Yes, cookies. So in a cookieless scenario, what's going to happen to Google Analytics?
Disappear.
Pardon?
Disappear.
Yes, and on 1st July 2023, Universal Analytics is set to disappear. So the latest version of Google Analytics is called GA4. The previous one is Universal Analytics, and it's set to be deprecated completely and obsolete on the 1st July of 2023, because no more cookies. So no cookies, no tracking. No tracking, no data. Right?
Actually, for the point that we were talking about, that to figure out the conversion comes from which channel. In one of my campaigns, I just did 2 landing pages, one dedicated to Facebook, one dedicated to same page but different names, one dedicated to Google. And with this, somehow it worked for me. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I'm just telling what my mind came to this idea. Okay, I cannot say exactly where it comes from, so I just, in my campaign, I just put a different landing pages for the same product. I did the campaign with Google, and I put a landing page, the link, and Facebook for the same product but different landing page, and then I was saying, okay, this conversion comes to this.
It's not a bad idea.
But it will cost extra, of course, right?
For sure, you're running
You have 2 campaigns at the same time, and then
anyways,
you
you will run 2 campaigns, right?
and it will like eat each other up. I mean, like
It
like
will
easily
easily-
cannibalize the something, no?
No, because anyways you will do 2 campaigns, right? One on Google, one on Facebook,
Yeah.
right?
But there is a problem. The problem is, if I may intervene, the problem being the fact that you cannot retarget on one channel if the landing page is on the other channel.
Say again?
So when I use, I'll dedicate a couple of minutes to this because I think it's important. The point is, Facebook is working better at the top or the middle of the funnel, mainly, to generate awareness. Google, especially Google search, works very well at the bottom of the funnel, when somebody's searching for something specific and you serve it to the user, So what I'm talking about is the best performing campaign that you will have, no matter what your product, I don't need to know the product, but the best performing campaign will be a Google retargeting campaign on the search network. That will be your best campaign. So retargeting users that have been on your landing page before and that are searching for a keyword that refers to your product. That's going to be the most profitable campaign that you're going to run. But if you bring people from Facebook to a landing page, you cannot retarget them on Google naturally, because that's the problem.
Two different channels. Yeah.
So it's not like he was suggesting, sorry, I'm talking he because I don't know your name, so sorry for that. But it's not happening what he's thinking, that he's cannibalizing it, but you're not, because it's not doing that, because it's 2 different channels, but you're not taking advantage of making them work together.
But if you just have a cookie on both of them.
Yes, exactly. So you should, anyway, put the cookie of Google within the landing page. But what happens if he does that? The whole purpose of having 2 landing pages falls.
Yeah.
You get the point? So you split it to have 2 channels, one channel to and the other channel, because you didn't want to have mixed data. And I'm telling that the solution is to put mixed data. So you're going to have to live with that. I would suggest go with one landing page, work top and middle of the funnel on Facebook, retarget them on Google, try to make the best understanding in analytics to attribute a conversion, and understand that they work better together. So just keep under scrutiny the cost per acquisition and the cost per lead, not the cost per click, okay, the cost per lead, and see what happens if you bring them to the same landing page as opposed to 2 different landing pages. And then do what's best. Yes?
Do you think that maybe server-side tracking will salvage some?
Very good point. Very good point. And the answer is, I don't know. So, I really hope so. I seriously hope so, because I'm telling all my clients to switch to server-side tagging. Okay? Server-side tagging is a way in which you actually you set up your Google Analytics to work on your server or an instance that is connected to your server. You can only do on some technologies. You can do it, of course, on Google Cloud, no wonder. You can do it also on some Azure, I think, and Amazon as well, but it has to be compliant with, I forgot the name, a protocol that is not even owned by Google, but is used by Google. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. Anyway, the server has to be compliant with Google in order for the data to be manageable. What happens is that today, Google and the Google Analytics cookie and the Facebook cookie is a third-party cookie. When you do the server-side tagging, those cookies become first-party cookies, right? So they are going to be released by Chrome, even when we will go to the cookieless scenario. Not sure I explained this properly. Is it clear? I told you before, Chrome is going to stop delivering cookies the 1st January 2024, okay? It's going to stop delivering third-party cookies. It will still deliver first-party cookies. So, some data lost with third-party cookies then will actually be tracked and measured by first-party cookies. So it's a brilliant point that you have. But this is another point of discussion. The point is that if a user says, I don't want to be tracked, that legally is supposed to be extended also to first-party cookies. So if the user comes to a website and says, I do not accept cookies, the guy, you cannot say, I'm sure he meant third-party cookies. You really cannot do that, okay? Maybe fourth, I don't know. Also first-party cookies, okay? So that's the point. Does it solve all the, does it get back all the data? No. How much of data can it get back? Probably 5-7% of the lost data. Not a lot. If you're running Google Ads campaigns, though, you need to start looking into setting up the Google Consent Mode and Google Enhanced Conversions. It's a setup that you need to do. You have to do it. Because if you set up Google Enhanced Conversions in Google Ads, what is going to happen is that you will have a machine learning algorithm working for you, trying to get back all the data that you have lost when the user said, I don't want cookies. Will it give you back that total amount of data? No. Google says it does give you back up to 70% of the data lost by people saying, I don't accept cookies. Okay? So do that, because it definitely helps you understand better how your campaigns are performing. Because I don't know about you, but I got clients that are losing, that when they started putting the banner of cookie acceptance, they lost 70% of data. And if you have 70% of your data lost in Google Analytics, and you use Google Analytics to feed Google Ads with the intelligence about the conversions, that means you are losing 70% of intelligence. Please, do not look at the analytical tools like Google Analytics as a rear view mirror to look backwards at what has happened. That's not what it is. Those tools are supposed to tell you what you are supposed to do in the future, not what has been in the past. So they are supposed to help you guide optimization, to guide monetization, okay? Is it 09 or is it 00?
09.
How much time is it? Done.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but tell me before you shoot. Product pricing is another one. I'm sure you know there's Reactive and ChargeBee. These are two tools that can be connected to the most common e-commerce platforms, and they are actually able to make you do like dynamic pricing. You have probably heard about it. Even Amazon does dynamic pricing. You have been to Amazon, one day and then the following day and saw that the product had changed price, right? That's dynamic pricing. So they are changed. What is the best example of dynamic pricing that you can think of in a
Flight
website?
tickets.
Yeah.
I used to work for Travelodge, and that's what it is.
Okay. Take out the gun. Shoot the gun. Yes, on the
The
spot.
trick is you use your laptop to search and then
Exactly.
use your phone to book.
Nobody will tell you anything.
Also gives you a different method of different thing.
Yeah. So that's a typical example of dynamic pricing. Is it something that only refers to like big transactional websites? No, it is also good for small e-commerce websites. You have to do it carefully, but you can do it. Even just adapting, for example, the pricing for somebody who's logged and not logged. That's a bit more difficult to spot as a difference. And you can always justify it because you have a loyal client on one side and a non-loyal client on the other side. But dynamic pricing is definitely a good idea to start personalizing your system. Conversion rate optimization is used to actually try to generate an interface that is one-to-one dedicated to one user. Who has heard about CRO, conversion rate optimization? Yes, you have? Okay. There is a tool by Google which is free. It's called Google Optimize. It makes A/B testing. That means you have a landing page, you are not sure if a picture of a cup of tea or a picture of a person drinking a cup of tea will perform better in terms of conversions. You make a test. You make a test. You send a certain percentage of traffic to version A, a certain percentage of traffic to version B, and then you wait, and when you have a statistically significant amount of data, you see which one is performing better than the other. Then you decide the experiment was won by version A, and you start doing another test, okay? That's A/B testing. Google Optimize helps you do A/B testing. It also helps you do multivariate testing, MVT, multivariate testing. Multivariate is even more complicated. Multivariate testing is, let's say that I don't just want to test 2 images on the landing page, but I also want to test 2 different headlines, 2 different descriptions, 2 different buttons, a different size of forms, okay? Many elements. So you create different versions of the many elements, you put them into the test, the result is hundreds of versions of the same page because you need to multiply all the options for all the number of options you have, okay? And you send traffic to the testing page, and after you have reached statistically significant data, then you can take a decision, and Google Optimize tells you, hey, version 51.2 is the one that converted the best. Everybody that has an e-commerce does A/B testing, or should do A/B testing. Most do, and they should do multivariate. What is the difficulty of doing multivariate testing? You need a lot of data to test hundreds and hundreds of features, and you need to make sure that you don't send all the traffic to a test, because a lot of the versions of the test will not perform as well as the original one. So testing sometimes can hinder the performance of the landing page.
Quick question.
Yes.
How would you do that with something like Performance Max, where every day it comes from different, the click value is different all the time, every day? You know what I'm saying?
Maybe, but I want to go better, a little more.
Max every day, at least for me, the source of the click varies significantly, and so it's hard to.
What do you mean by source of the click?
Like, some days I'll be getting 10-cent clicks, others will be like 30-cent clicks.
Okay.
I can see from like Shopify's
Yeah.
referrer name, it'll be like YouTube, Google,
Yeah.
or others. And every day, it's the ratio is different, so it's hard to make a decision based off that. Like some of it's come from YouTube,
I wouldn't
some
do
of it's shopping campaigns.
How
But you
old
don't
are
know performance tags.
How old are the campaigns?
Huh?
How old are the campaigns?
This one's almost gonna be 6 weeks
Yeah, so first of all, they're still young.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're probably still in the learning phase. Be careful with targeting those websites and YouTube with performance max campaigns immediately at the beginning. Maybe the network, I would use it a little bit, afterwards the campaigns have delivered a bit more. But I think it's just a question of age. It also depends on what is the maximum budget that you're investing. So sometimes if you have little budget, it can happen that the cost per click fluctuates. It can happen. It should stabilize in time, but you're also subject to competition. So if the budget is not too big, then the competition effect is heavier. The heavier it is, the competition effect. If it's heavy, it means that you probably have not too much budget. Try to increase the budget, for example.
But once I increase the budget, the learning phase starts to cut to zero.
Yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it in gradual. You probably first of all you need to start getting to learn. When you do increase of budget, do never exceed 10% increase. Otherwise, it really starts from zero. If your increase is within 10%, we are noticing that normally it should be fine.
Even before the 6 to 8 weeks?
I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch it. Have you imported first party data?
Huh?
Have you imported first party data in the
For
campaigns?
conversions, I tried doing that, but recently, yes.
That is the most important feature of the campaigns. The best way to make them work is by importing first party data. If you don't import first party data, I have noticed that many clients, many people I talk to, we do consult a lot of businesses. If you don't import your first party data for the PMAX campaigns, they don't perform well.
Okay.
So it's hard.
What do you mean?
Try to do it.
What do you mean first person?
Your mail database, your customers list.
Okay, so the email list.
Yeah.
Okay.
You obviously know that it works as an exclusion list. So those people will not be targeted. They're only used for the algorithm to understand who you want to target. So,
Okay.
so don't worry, you're not going to be targeted because they're clients already. These are fraud detection is on our web because I'm almost finished. Okay. Fraud detection is one of the most important and one of the oldest way in which artificial intelligence is ever been used by banks and also online transactions to understand if there are suspicious movements. Okay. Now we come to a crossroads. Okay. Either we start the question and Q&A session because I think I was supposed to stop at 5, right? Sorry. And then we have the Q&A session. So, do you want the Q&A session? We kind of started with that. Yeah. Do you have questions?
I have a more. Like when you said about Google Optimize, it's not AI system. You still need to find some goals. You need to change the picture. You do it all by yourself.
And indeed, I didn't list it there. I didn't list it here.
Okay.
It's true, I forgot to go.
Because, yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So the point is that Google Optimize is used. I thought it was interesting to talk about the testing, but I wanted to get to a point. If you want to just use A/B testing and MVT testing, you can use Google Optimize. But Google Optimize is not driven by artificial intelligence. Okay?
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's handwork.
Yeah, it's just the handwork, okay? But if you look at Evolve, for example, this tool is definitely using artificial intelligence for the targeting because I kind of introduced it. The point is that when you have too many elements to test, you end up with too many variations, too many options, too many pages to test. You can end up easily with thousands of pages. How can you test thousands of pages? You need millions of clients, and thousands of pages will never outperform your best page. So you are sure that some hundreds of thousands of people, you will send them to a low-performing page. You don't want to do that. So the way that Evolve makes is just, it makes random texts based on the performance of your existing pages and based on the behavior of your client that it's being registering, understands what are actually the versions of the multivariate testing that will work. So even if the tool could create 10,000 versions, it only tests 1,000. That's done with artificial intelligence. You understand what I mean? Okay. Another thing, I will add just one degree of difficulty. This tool makes another intelligent thing, which is, normally when you do A/B testing, you test one page, and you test how much people test goes from one page to the following page, okay? Evo, this tool, allows you to create A/B testing or multivariate testing through a series of pages. So it tells you the combination of elements in this page with the combination of elements in this page and in this page is the one that generates the best results. That's the impressive part. So it takes the one CRO test across several pages. So you test a funnel. You don't test anymore just one page. But you need a lot of data. And you need a big amount of traffic to do that. Okay? Have I answered your question?
Yeah.
Well, it was not a question. It was actually a correction, and thank you for that. Any questions? Yes?
Because how to make a high performance of digital marketing? I mean,
How to make?
how to maximize digital marketing performance. So what I mean is, 10 years ago, I feel like I need to decide what keyword I should put, what description, what banner I should put. I direct to the Google or Facebook. But nowadays, kind of like I obey to the AI algorithm of the Google Facebook. So they suggest you should use this keyword, you should use this description, you should use this banner, and I just obey their suggestion. Do you think that's the best way to maximize my performance, or we should conflict to the
I
suggestion?
really wish I had the answer to this. I would probably be flying with a helicopter here. Anyway. No, okay. There is no single way, but the question is very right. So, Facebook and Google tells you how to manage the campaigns, and they do help you. There is a service client. The problem is, my problem has been with some clients that the people that they call, because I'm in Italy, every time you make a new campaign and you put some interesting money, Google calls you immediately. Like if was your mother-in-law, just calls, what are you doing? Talk to me first, right? Okay. So they do know what they're saying, but not all of them. Some people are very junior. So try to find out if the person on the phone that's supporting you is a junior or not a junior. If it's a junior, be very careful. In general, I would not do everything that Google says, because it's a bit like giving to the fox, the keys to where you keep the chickens. So you don't want to just let Google do too much, but unfortunately, with the PMAX campaigns, you kind of have to surrender to the fact that the algorithm has to work its way. But when it comes to the most important thing is how to decide how much money. That has and always will be your decision. So you can listen to Facebook and Google and the other platforms as to what they think you should do with your campaigns, but as to how much money to put in your campaigns, that's your decision and your decision alone. Whenever you start a campaign, remember you are doing marketing only if you are measuring what you're doing. So if we have to have a definition for marketing, marketing is supposed to obtain attention, to drive action. And no marketing activity should ever be considered finished until you have measured the outcomes. So you always need to plan for the outcomes. And before starting a campaign, you need to try and understand what your budget is going to be. Okay? Because if you listen to Facebook and listen to Google, they will always tell you to increase the budget. Up to a point, they're not stupid. They know they want you long term, so they don't want you to waste all your money there. But you have to manage your own budget. That's the most difficult part. Companies today are having the hardest part in understanding how much budget they should dedicate to digital marketing activities. I don't know if you agree with me, but that's the most difficult part. Like, I have a company, or I own a company, or I serve a client, how much money should I put into the digital marketing? That's the most difficult thing. I can tell you, John, I saw your hand, just give me a second. Sorry. In general, in the world, all the CMOs that have been interviewed in a worldwide survey said they invest 7.5% of the total revenue in marketing as an average, okay? So you make 100 million, 7.5 is in marketing. But it's so much subject to variation, you know, because automotive is one thing, you know, phone carrier is another thing. Then luxury is totally different kind of thing, you know, or like you drive a Volvo, 40% is advertising, okay? So it's very different. The average is 7.5%. My point is, if I'm talking to a startup that says, I want to launch a new product, no matter how good the product is, if there is no product market fit yet, that means you still need to do a lot of awareness for that product. You need to factor in at least 25% in marketing as to what you want to make at the end of the year. You want your startup to make $100,000, you need to put 25Ks if you are generating a new product or new service. So if you don't have a product market fit yet. Am I speaking in right terms? Because you know English is not my main language, so correct me if I'm wrong. You understand what I mean? So if you're selling something that somebody else is already selling, but you do it better, you do it cheaper, you do it nicer, that's different. You can lower and you can go with 15, 20%. But if nobody does it, nobody knows that you exist, 25% of your revenue is very likely what you need to spend. There's no benchmark. Sorry for the delay.
No, respect for the fact that you're answering questions. So my point of interest is data collection, because it is the fuel for both AI, machines, and humans to base decisions on. I don't know, maybe now is not the right time to ask and pick your brain about how you prepare or what you expect, and knowing you cannot see in the future, but with cutting the data collection that is coming for us all, what do you predict? What do you think? How will you prepare?
Yeah, so to tell the truth, I'm not, okay, my predictions are not that important. I'm nobody. So I can tell you just my opinion based on what I read and what I study. So it's not a personal prediction, okay? But I kind of feel that it is correct. What I am seeing, because I talk to Google, I talk to Facebook, I talk to other, you know, I talk to Microsoft. What I see is that they are they are putting a lot of effort into integrating systems for the data collection. And the point is, if your data, this is another important sentence that I would like you to remember. Bad data drives wrong decisions. You're not going to be able to take a good decision if your data is wrong or incomplete. So, what's your name, sir? Faisal.
Yes.
Okay? What Faisal says is super important. You need to be aware of how well you are collecting and, if I may say, govern data throughout its lifetime to make sure that you actually can put it to use. First of all, you need to collect it well. You need to also know if you can use it or you cannot use it, because many times you can. But what I see is that many are moving into trying to integrate systems. For example, there are native integrations that Google has developed with Salesforce, for example, to try and increase the osmosis of data within the two platforms. Or they have actually also created an internal CRM integrator. It's called CRM Int. They had a great fantasy in naming it like that. So it's made by Google. And all the platforms are going towards integration. Facebook is doing integration with API, with many tools. And in a way, also the consent mode by Google, that is now demanded by Google's accounts, and the Facebook API integration demanded by the Facebook Business Manager, they both go exactly in that way, trying to increase the quality of the collected data. What I see in the future, I see in the future that people, businesses that manage to have a proficient an efficient strategy to generate their own data when it comes to marketing first-party data are the winning ones.
And that's what Facebook's doing as well. They're trying to create first-party data.
Facebook has first-party data because when you log in, you give them your first-party data. What companies, companies don't have first-party data. Okay, so first-party data means if you're in e-commerce, this is super important. So sorry if I bother you for a couple of minutes more. When you're an e-commerce company, when you have been an e-commerce company for your life, okay? At what moment exactly does the company know who she is dealing with, who the user of the e-commerce website is? Only when they buy, okay? When they buy, they know it. But the point is, they could do that because, they had cookies to fuel their campaigns for recovering the cart, recovering people that have been there. When they will not have cookies anymore, they will not be able to do these, for example, basket recovery campaigns, because they're not going to have that data because it was based on a cookie of the navigation. So that's why the strategy, the communication strategy of the e-commerce has to shift towards the generation of first-party data. So trying to gather the information about the client before they make a purchase. Otherwise, only a few, as an average, the conversion rate of an e-commerce website is 1%. 100 people come, one person buys. Do you only want 1% of your users' data? You want more, right? So you have to try to ask the person to qualify. Paul is working on a wonderful way to actually create loyalty, okay? When you create loyalty programs, incentive programs, you don't do anything else than asking them to subscribe to your website before they actually make a purchase. What do? You get the first-party data. Oh, Google stops the cookies. No problem. I put the first-party data into Segmentation, Klaviyo, whatever system that I'm using.
But you give something back in return. You create a value exchange.
Yeah. You need to give something back in return. But that's a strategy focus.
Totally.
You have been used to give back the product in exchange for money, right? As an e-commerce. You get the point?
Absolutely.
But now you have to give value, right? If you want to give value, can you give as a value back? Can you give crappy content? You can't. People will not give you their database. You have to give incentives. You have to give knowledge. You have to give tutorials. You have to give, promotions, discounts, information, valuable information. The amount of value that you are generously able to give, it comes back to you, tenfold, because it helps you not only to nurture the relationship one-to-one with that person, but that person becomes a cluster. That cluster becomes a cluster in all the advertising platforms, and you create lookalike audiences based on those clusters with specific offers, specific ideas, specific creatives, maybe dynamic creatives like we've seen, and that's when you start doing things right in digital marketing.
True, but don't you think from the advertising wise, it kind of goes back to ground zero because you have no data, you have no cookies, and it feels like you're just testing out the market again because you have no targeted audience, basically.
Yeah. So those companies that have not done well their homeworks, they have not started with the basics that I recommend everybody, and most of the companies, they just think it's just a theory that they would do, understanding your targeting personas, understanding exactly who your audiences are, setting your KPI, and understanding what they perceive as value. They will have to do that. If they have done that, they're not starting from zero. If they haven't done it, welcome to the new world. Okay, guys, I talked a lot. I really thank you for being so patient. Thank you very much. Do you have other questions? No? Okay?
And move upstairs for the networking party programs, basically.
Yes.
Continue questions, why not? Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for listening.